Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gotti Schwartz, coming to you from Los Angeles, and here are some of the stories we're following tonight.
1 year ago, the world was bracing for the fall of Kyiv. Well, I've just come from a visit to Kyiv, and I can report Kyiv stands strong.
Just off his trip into Ukraine's war zone, President Biden gives a defiant speech in Poland today, and he does it just hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin makes an announcement that's got some people even more worried about the potential for nuclear war. Then the Alec Murdoch trial resumes, with his surviving son saying that his father was, quote, destroyed by the deadly shootings of his wife and younger son.
I walked in the door and saw him and gave him a hug and just broken down.
The coast-to-coast winter storm is moving east from California to Maine, expected to bring lots of snow, strong winds, and freezing rain. And you've likely heard a lot about that train derailment in Ohio, but that was one of several already this year, like this one in Nebraska, which happened today. Pattern or coincidence? We're going to take a close look. And a woman walking her dog is kicked in the head by a moose. But don't worry, she's doing just fine. We've got her story coming up. Now, leading up to President Biden's big speech in Poland today, I kept thinking about something that we've heard from the State Department, which is if Russia stops fighting, the war ends. If Ukraine stops fighting, Ukraine ends. And that was sort of the gist, not only of Biden's speech today, but also that of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, Biden seemed to make it clear that the war in Ukraine is at a critical stage as we edge closer to the 1-year mark, calling it a test for democracies everywhere and straight up blaming Putin for the war.
Every day the war continues is his choice. He could end the war with a word. President Putin's craven lust for land and power will fail, and the Ukrainian people's love for their country will prevail. Democracies of the world will stand guard over freedom today, tomorrow, and forever.
Now, before that speech, Putin delivered his own, giving a very different account of the war.
I would like to repeat, they started the war, and we used the force in order to stop it.
Now, around the time Putin was speaking, Russian forces shot rockets that hit a bus station in southern Ukraine, killing at least 6 people. NBC's Josh Letterman joins us now from Warsaw. Josh, what was the theme of Biden's speech today? What can you tell us about the reaction there on the ground?
Well, the reaction was certainly one of gratitude and, frankly, Gotti, relief that the U.S. and its allies are going to continue with the kind of steadfast support that we saw in the first year of this war. The White House says there were some 30,000 people who attended the speech here today in a country where President Biden's approval rating amongst Polish citizens for his handling of this war stands at 82%, according to recent Pew polling, a sign of just how much countries here on the eastern flank close to Russia's doorstep understand that they need that strong support and solidarity from the U.S. and all of the rest of these allies if they're going to be able to continue to stand up to Russia's aggression and to support Ukraine in the second year of the war.
80%. And meanwhile, it seems like support for Ukraine appears to be waning here in the United States. Last month, 41% of Americans said they support Biden's handling of the war. 50% said they disapprove. Why is Biden continuing his support for Ukraine if the American people don't seem to be fully on board?
Well, partially because this is a central tenet of President Biden's worldview and, frankly, the reason that he ran for president. He has repeatedly described his purpose for being in office as to help lead this fight between democracies and autocracies. And, of course, we've heard President Biden in the past frame that conversation in domestic terms around former President Trump and some of the views of some of his Republican opponents. But in this context of this Ukraine war, President Biden Biden, according to White House officials, really feels like it is his responsibility to convince those Americans who may be skeptical of continued support for Ukraine that this is a fight that they need to have, that it is not charity to be helping Ukraine, but that this is a fight for basic democratic values and for freedom, that if we don't fight it now by helping Ukraine, countries like the U.S. and, frankly, countries in Europe are going to have to fight themselves.
Josh, this war has been going on for now just about a year. Realistically, is there any end in sight?
There doesn't appear to be in the near term. Both President Zelensky of Ukraine and President Putin of Russia appear more dug in than ever. That was explicitly clear today from the speech, the dueling speech that President Putin gave in Moscow. And even the United States understands that this is going to be a long slog. There have been concerns that that could lead some of these European countries and some in the West, in the United States, to grow fatigued of this as the costs are starting to mount and to want to push Ukraine into a negotiation with Putin, some type of a quick diplomatic resolution to this. But President Biden making the case once again in his speech today, Gadi, that the best way and the quickest way to end this war is to strengthen Ukraine's hand on the battlefield so that when it comes time for some type of negotiations, Ukraine will be in the best position possible and President Putin will know that he has to back down, with President Biden saying that autocrats like President Putin only understand one word: no.
Josh Letterman, thanks so much. And over the last several hours, we've all been hearing a lot more about what they call that START nuclear treaty, which President Vladimir Putin said Russia is basically walking away from for now. Now, that nuclear treaty is the last remaining nuclear arms control treaty with the United States. But what does all this actually mean? Joining us now is NBC News national security and international affairs analyst Michael McFaul. He's also the ambassador, or former ambassador, to Russia. Ambassador, can you break this down for us? Nuclear treaties were supposed to be a path away from the possibility of mutual assured destruction. Is this sable rattling, or is this something more sinister?
Well, it's definitely not a good day when he pulls out of the New START treaty. I was part of the team that helped to negotiate this treaty. I was at the signing ceremony with President Obama in Prague in 2010 with President Medvedev, and it was a very different era and a very different moment from today. This treaty was not, for us, it was not a gift for us. Medvedev signed it. He was then the president of Russia because he thought it was in Russia's national interest for two reasons. One, the treaty put a cap for how many nuclear warheads each side could have, 1,550. Now, that's still a big number, but that was a 30% reduction over what it was before. Getting rid of nuclear weapons was an agenda that both of our countries shared. But secondly, and I think even more importantly, in the treaty, there are a series of inspection agreements that you can go and we can see their sites, they can go and see our sites. And by sharing that information, literally inspectors flying in to look at missiles and warheads on submarines, it reduces the uncertainty about what we're doing with our nuclear arsenal and what they're doing. By suspending the treaty today, Putin is increasing uncertainty about what we're doing with nuclear weapons in the world. That's a bad thing.
Now, there's a tweet that's coming out of Russia that seems to be catching a lot of attention. It's from a Russian government official. They tweeted this out a little bit earlier. They said this does not mean withdrawal. Return to the treaty remains possible under certain circumstances. Now, this is Russia. I doubt that anybody is tweeting on a whim there. What do those circumstances look like, and what might be behind that tweet?
Well, I know Ambassador Ulyanov well, and he was part of these negotiations. He's an arms control expert, and I take that as a good sign. That means that maybe there's a way to get back to the treaty, but my fear is that Russia will be demanding all sorts of things in order to do so that will be unacceptable to the Biden administration. But that is better than full withdrawal, full stop, and we should all appreciate that Ambassador Ulyanov decided to put out that tweet.
And finally, Ambassador, this is a question that I have on my mind every single day. I hate to ask because we don't want to sensationalize it, but it seems very relevant considering what we've seen. Do you think that we could see a nuclear attack used in this war?
I think it's a very, very low probability. First of all, an attack against us is a 0% probability. There's mutual assured destruction. Putin understands that. And by the way, I give President Biden a lot of credit for avoiding World War III. I think we use that phrase way too often. I see very little damage of even potential of a conventional war with Russia right now. He has drawn that line finally, and that's a great achievement. With respect to inside Ukraine, a tactical nuclear weapon, I also think it's a very low probability event. It would have no military concrete objective to do. The Ukrainians aren't going to stop fighting just because Putin used a nuclear weapon. Number two, the entire international community would condemn it. And we think the whole world is against Putin right now. That's actually not true. A lot of the world is just sitting on the sidelines in neutral. They don't want to be on one side or the next. But if he uses a nuclear weapon, that would change. And number three, I'm not even so sure that generals inside Russia would support the use of a nuclear weapon. And that's something Putin has to contemplate as he thinks about it. So I think it's a very low probability event, not zero. And that's good that our officials are thinking about bringing that possibility down even further. But I think it's highly unlikely.
Reassuring to hear you say that. Ambassador Michael McFaul, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And nearly a year into the Russian invasion, and Ukraine has defied military expectations. The capital, Kyiv, is still standing despite Russian advances in the east. The Ukrainian army has taken back some territory. Here's NBC's News national security analyst Clint Watts with a look at where the war stands 1 year on.
Let's look back 1 year at what Vladimir Putin's ambitions were and where he has failed to achieve them. First, we saw a very daring invasion in many ways from the Russians, and one that completely failed, coming in from the north, the east, and the south. What was Vladimir Putin trying to do? Well, what he had hoped for was to make Novorossiya, the new Russia, which was trying to bring back old territories once held by the Russians long ago, into his control. This area essentially moved from this territory right here. He was trying to link all of this territory to Transnistria, which is a Russian majority population, and bring all control of the Black Sea. But it didn't work. And today what we see is a very different battlefield. You'll note in red, those are areas still taken by the Russians for the moment. But more importantly, it's the battle here in the east. A daring Ukrainian counteroffensive back late last fall, early winter, you see here in light blue, took back a very important axis, this Izium axis, which was a supply line that was bringing in troops and materials from Russia. Separately, today, if we looked at the battlefield, we would see lots of fighting around Kupiansk, lots of fighting here around Lima, and most importantly, this battle here at Bakhmut, carried out by the Wagner mercenary militia, filled with prisoners and mercenaries that are taking massive casualties. Important to note across all of this, the Russians taking lots of casualties, moving with dismounted troops, trying to bring their tanks across and meeting stiff resistance, taking lots of losses. So we look now to see where the battle might go in the future. The question is, can the Ukrainians hold here? And if they do, will they be able to do some sort of counteroffensive and really push Russia back towards its own borders? Separately, what we're looking at is in the south, this battlefield here. Note that the Ukrainians pushed all the way back with armor formations, lots of troop movement, all the way to this river and took back Kherson. There, you would see today, if we go in and look at the satellite view, the Russians building fortifications, trench systems in depth, doing everything they can to try and hold on to Crimea, which they took in 2014. Looking forward, will the Ukrainians be able to push in the east or push in the south? That's what we're going to try and figure out in the coming months.
Such a good overview. NBC's Clint Watts, thanks so much. And around 5,000 miles from the front lines, a munitions factory in Scranton, Pennsylvania has expanded production. Output is hitting levels not seen since the Korean War. Sky News correspondent Mark Stone has more.
It is an unlikely place to find Ukraine's war effort in full swing. In the bowels of a former railway plant, 5,000 miles from the battlefields, American steelworkers producing round after round of artillery. We're on the production line of a century-old factory. An industry that had been dismissed as obsolete is now in overdrive.
robot will operate in this environment all day, every day.
The tour offered to Sky News is an attempt to show that the production line is fine, that the West is not running out of ammunition. There's a surge in production.
We're working as hard as we need to work to fulfill the requirements of the contract. We're working probably 2 shifts every day, solid 5-6 days a week, and also preparing, to increase production incrementally.
None of the officials will mention Ukraine itself. Language is carefully controlled, contracts and meeting demand. But the contract is Ukraine and the demand is huge. 11,000 rounds now roll off this line each month, and yet it's not nearly matching what Ukraine's army is using.
Well, one staggering statistic which illustrates the intensity of the war in Ukraine, the military there is firing off between 5,000 and 7,000 of these artillery shells every single day. And that's why the US military is investing $2 billion to ramp up production of facilities like these.
This factory alone is getting $240 million to modernize because Russia has spooked the West. A mechanical war of the type they thought was in the past. It's firing up old factories and old rivalries.
Russia is obviously the wrong, and we're doing the right thing by supporting them.
The pre-Ukraine just-in-time supply chain is breaking down and stockpiles are shrinking. Put simply, it's a race against Russia to rearm. It's expensive. Important safety standards slow the process, and this is the easy part. Because from here, they're shipped 1,000 miles west to Iowa, where they're filled with explosives and fuses are fitted, and then to Ukraine. This surge in activity reflects the new fragile reality, hollowed out Western stockpiles and the threat of continental conflicts. Mark Stone, Sky News, in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
And that production continues as we speak. Mark Stone with Sky News. Thanks so much. Plains, Georgia is the birthplace of former President Jimmy Carter. It's a modest little town that he was happy to return to when he left the White House some 43 years ago. And now it is also where the former president has entered home hospice care at the age of 98. Carter has always talked about his love and dedication for where he grew up. It's a place he's affectionately known as Mr. Jimmy. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard takes us on a trip to this tiny town in South Georgia.
Plains, Georgia today looks much as it did in the 1970s, remaining inextricably linked in history to the Carters.
It's interesting that Rosa and I grew up in the same little town. As a matter of fact, when I was 4 years old, my family lived next door to hers.
Celebrating their wedding day in 1946 and their anniversary 75 years later in that very same town.
My life's been an adventure ever since.
We have carved out for ourselves a very wonderful life in Plains, Georgia, which is the home of my wife and me.
140 miles south of Atlanta, Plains never had more than 1,000 residents, many of whom were farmers. Young Jimmy's family grew peanuts. They had a warehouse and a store in town, too. It wasn't a place many others had heard of until Jimmy Carter came along.
It was just a perfect place for a small-town president to take root.
Has that Jimmy Carter sign ever come down?
No, it's right where it belongs and will always be there, hopefully.
Several sites in town are managed by the National Park Service for the thousands that visit every day, drawn to the town the same way the Carters were.
Plains has always been a haven for us. When I got out of the Navy in 1953, I came back to Plains.
He returned to the Carter peanut operation, then got into politics, experiences that would lead Jimmy to turn Main Street Plains into America's Main Street.
And with us now is Greg Bluestein. He's a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. His latest article is titled "A Somber President's Day in Jimmy Carter's Plains." Thanks so much for being here. I want to ask, what's the mood like today in Plains?
Well, it's somber. Folks know that this was inevitable, but it's also, there's a sense of joy of a life well lived. As you noted, so many people in Plains know him not just as a former president, but as a neighbor, a friend, Mr. Jimmy. They see him at the ice cream parlor, the town events, at the nearby theater in neighboring Americus. And until recently, he taught Sunday school courses. He presided over the annual peanut parade. He's not just a famed politician in Plains. He's a member of the community.
And I love hearing the community describe a person that we all know as the president, but they all know as Mr. Jimmy. Here's one person describing the connection she feels to the former president. Take a look.
His legacy is that of not just talking, but doing. And so I think you can look all around and see bits of things he did, not necessarily while he was president. It may have gotten its start there. But that knowledge kind of permeates.
It may have gotten his start in the White House, and yet when we think of Jimmy Carter, so many of us think of him with a hammer in hand. How do you think Jimmy Carter's legacy is going to be carried on?
Well, look, it's going to be carried on by the people of Plains who know that they've got big shoes to fill by his family members, but also, in the words of one historian who spoke at President's Day in Plains this week, he encouraged folks who are supporters of Carter to take the Carter challenge, to do something nice for someone else, to think of other people, to put someone else before you. I think that's how it's going to live on. You know, no one can fill his shoes, but people can carry out the Carter challenge in his honor.
And do we have any more information from the Carter family or the foundation about how he's doing right now and the care he's receiving at home?
We don't have any concrete information, but what we do know is he's been ailing for a while. You know, he suffered from cancer in 2015, several hospitalizations in 2019, and he decided to forego any further medical treatment and hospital intervention and live out his final days in his home, the same home that he shared with Rosalind since 1961 in the heart of Plains, Georgia.
A home that he did some renovations to, right?
Yeah, it has expanded. Now there's a Secret Service presence. And by the way, it's the Secret Service who's also been a presence throughout this community. You know, they're like family to so many of the residents in Plains. One former lifeguard at the public pool told me one time he blew the whistle on some folks who were horse playing in the middle of the pool, only to find out that it was Jimmy Carter trying to dunk the Secret Service officer.
I keep thinking about this article describing the scene outside of the former president's home, where you've got the SUVs belonging to the Secret Service, and then you've got his home, and the SUVs cost more than the home, and that's exactly how the former president wanted to carry on his retirement, right?
Exactly. Look, he could have lived anywhere after serving in the White House and losing to Ronald Reagan in 1980. But he decided to come back to this tiny town of hardly 500 people of Plains, Georgia, to carry out his final decades. You know, he certainly spent a lot of time in Atlanta and Washington and elsewhere, but Plains was always his home and still is.
A retirement we can all aspire to. Greg Bluestein, thanks so very much.
Thank you.
Minnesota is getting its first taste of what could be a historic snowstorm. And yeah, we're talking about Minnesota in February, so you know this is going to be bad. In the next couple of days, the Twin Cities could get over 2 feet of snow. That would make this the biggest storm to hit the region in 12 years. And it's part of a much bigger coast-to-coast storm, putting 58 million Americans under winter alerts tonight, not to mention the other 62 million facing wind alerts. And that's not all. In New Jersey today, a possible tornado touchdown near Princeton, shocking folks there. And here's a look at some of the damage as we go to NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns, who's tracking all of this for us tonight. Bill, what's going on?
Gotti, this has been a wild day of weather already. We're at the beginning of this storm. From the New Jersey tornado, 90-degree temperatures in Texas. Now the winds are howling through California, already over 120,000 people without power. And as I said, this is just the beginning of this storm as it makes its journey across the country. Snow is broken out all the way through Wisconsin, Minneapolis in the beginning of their snowstorm. Same for Salt Lake City. And now that cold air and those high gusty winds are coming down through Nevada. They're heading for Vegas this evening, where it could hit 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So we got all sorts of issues out there. Number one we'll start with is the winter issues. And this is the life-threatening portion of this storm. Tomorrow afternoon and then into Thursday. Blizzard warnings here from just about Minneapolis, St. Paul to Sioux City to Fargo to Bismarck. Everywhere in between is where we're thinking if you get stuck on the roads, rescuers may not be able to get to you because of the blizzard conditions and the whiteout conditions. That's why they're telling people stay off the roads, definitely tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening into Thursday morning. That's kind of the peak of the storm in this area. And then it's tonight in areas of Wyoming and through the Four Corner region. And we're going to get that low elevation snow too in California. I mean, this is going to be wild pictures all the way down to 2,000 to 1,000 foot elevations. It usually doesn't snow at those low elevations in California, but you're going to see those pictures this week. As far as cities getting big snowstorms, Salt Lake City 6 to 12, Denver not a big ordeal for you 3 to 6, but from Rapid City to Minneapolis here, southern Wisconsin, South Dakota, and areas of Wisconsin and northern Michigan. That's the bullseye for who's going to get a foot. Maybe someone will get 2 feet of snow. There's a sneaky little ice storm in here too. This area from Detroit, Kalamazoo, just south of Grand Rapids here, north of Fort Wayne, this is the area that has a chance for power outages from significant freezing rain and mixture of sleet. And that should be north of Chicago up towards Milwaukee too. So right along that Wisconsin-Illinois border. So that's the ice storm portion of this storm. Now, as far as the winds go, the highest winds are going to be in the southwest, the Four Corner region, and into areas. There are already pictures in North Texas of just the wind and the dust blowing all over the place. 72 million people are at risk in this one. And these are the peak wind gusts tonight for many areas like Vegas, San Diego, Flagstaff, Tucson, and Phoenix. And then tomorrow as we head here into the Central Plains. But a lot of 50 to 70 mile per hour winds. And on top of all this, the temperatures are going to be ridiculous. We're going to break over 100 record highs in the next 2 days from areas of the south to the mid-Atlantic to the southeast. Nashville tomorrow, 80 degrees. Charlotte will be close to your record. Same for Atlanta. Jackson should be mid-80s. And as I mentioned, it continues. On Thursday will be the big day where we'll shatter just a ton of records. D.C. should be 80 degrees. Heading towards the last week of February, Raleigh at 84, and we're breaking record highs here, Gotti, by about 5 degrees. So pretty incredible stuff. Not to mention that New Jersey tornado today, which was the first February tornado in New Jersey since 1999.
Bill Cairns, tornado in New Jersey. Thanks so much. Still to come, the Murdaugh murder trial continues. Alec Murdaugh's surviving son taking the stand today. What he just revealed about his father, that's ahead, so stay tuned. Right now, the Supreme Court is considering a case that affects almost everything when it comes to social media and a lot of tech platforms. The case involves a challenge to what's known as Section 230. It's basically a certain clause that protects internet sites from being sued for things that are shared or posted on their platforms. Now, at the center of all this is a family with the last name of Gonzalez. The Gonzalez family lost their daughter in a 2015 terrorist attack in Paris, and they are working to make the case that Google and by extension YouTube should be liable because the algorithm promoted content that was recruiting people to ISIS. Now, right out of the gate, during oral arguments, some of the justices admitted that they were confused about all the techie details on the case. You got to take a listen.
So I guess I'm thoroughly confused.
And I don't understand how a neutral suggestion about something that you've expressed an interest in is aiding and abetting. I don't understand it.
I mean, we're a court. We really don't know about these things. You know, these are not like the 9 greatest experts on the internet.
And hopefully the laughter stops there. Let's now go to South Carolina for the double murder trial of Alec Murdaugh. Today, Buster Murdaugh, Alec's only surviving son, took the stand.
What kind of condition was he in? What was his demeanor?
Yeah, his demeanor was, he was destroyed. He was heartbroken. I walked in the door and saw him and gave him a hug and just broken down.
NBC's Katie Beck is in South Carolina with more.
On Tuesday, Alec Murdaugh's only surviving son, Buster, taking the stand in his defense, describing the night his father told him his brother and mother were brutally murdered. Also describing his father's demeanor that night as heartbroken and devastated. Buster Murdaugh, also on the stand, said it was normal for guns to be left out and about on the property, and that it was also routine that his father would have taken a shower and changed his clothes after working outside in the heat. He also challenged some of the prosecution's timeline in the case. We later in the day heard from a forensic engineer who talked about the trajectory of the bullet that killed Paul Murdaugh, saying a shooter as tall as Alec Murdaugh likely did not commit this crime.
Could you say to a degree of engineering certainty, more probably than not, that Alec
Murdaugh on the night of June 7th did not fire that shot into the quail pen?
In my opinion, it's very unlikely that he fired that shot.
There was an extensive cross-examination of that witness on the stand, prosecutors challenging his credibility as an expert witness in the case. Buster Murdaugh also said on the stand today that he was aware of his father's opioid use and that his father checked into a detox facility in 2018. Buster Murdaugh saying he had no knowledge of his father's alleged financial crimes until after the murders. Gotti?
Katie Beck, thank you. After the break, is the water safe to drink? Well, people are so concerned about their safety in Ohio that officials are drinking from the tap just to prove that it's clean. Plus, before we go, you gotta see this. The Virginia State University Marching Band absolutely crushing it during a performance on the Today Show this morning. We'll be right back. And it's time now for some of the big headlines we're watching tonight. Fire officials in Ohio say they still don't know what caused that deadly explosion at a metal manufacturing plant yesterday. At least one worker was killed and dozens others were hurt, some with severe burns. In Venice, Italy, the city's famous water canals are drying up. Prolonged low tides and scarce alpine snow seem to be behind the recent phenomenon. And although main waterways are still operating, it's been a struggle for the city, given that a lot of those canals serve as streets. Home Depot today announced it is investing $1 billion into wage increases for its hourly employees. As of this month, the average starting salary is now $15 an hour. The move is largely seen as a response to the nationwide labor shortage of frontline workers. And get this, an unopened OG iPhone just sold for over $63,000. That's 100 times its original price. And we're talking first generation circa 2007 here. Actually, as I look at those images, I realize I have one of those in my desk from a producer. I can't even remember who gave it to me. So if you're watching this, come see me. $63,000. Apparently, the original owner of the phone got it as a gift, but they never opened it. And unbelievable, this attack was caught on camera. A woman was walking her dog in Alaska. She got kicked in the head by a moose.
You guys, this moose is chasing this person. Go, love.
Dad, go, love. And you should give him a heads up.
Hey, 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 watch out! Watch out!
She says she's okay. She did have to get a few staples in her head, but she has survived and has quite the story. And is it safe to drink the water in East Palestine after a train carrying toxic chemicals derailed? Well, you can test it all you want, but it really comes down to, would you drink it? And as you can see right here, this is the head of the EPA and the Ohio governor deciding to do just that and drink from the tap.
We believe in science, so we don't feel like we're being your guinea pig, but we don't mind proving to you that we believe the water's safe.
Okay.
Here's to Caroline.
I appreciate that.
Here's to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Awesome.
That's good.
All that while the EPA is now taking charge of the toxic cleanup efforts and ordering the train company responsible to pay up.
Let me also be crystal clear. Norfolk Southern will pay for cleaning up the mess that they created and the trauma that they inflicted on this community.
And here's NBC News correspondent Ron Allen in East Palestine with more right in front of the train tracks. Now, Ron, there's the promise of consequences, then there's actual follow-through, right? What happens if the company doesn't take care of all this?
Well, the EPA is going to be monitoring the situation day by day. They say they are going to be very aggressively trying to make sure that the company does this. If they see work not getting done or the pace not going along as they want it to, the EPA can step in and start to do the job themselves or aspects of it. And then they can bill the company, they say, as much as 3 times the cost of the cleanup as a fine. So how that will work out over the next days and weeks and months and years, perhaps. We don't know, but that's the intent.
And it looks like behind you, things are back up and running. How's the train company responding?
Yeah, the trains were up and running a few days after the evacuation order was lifted and people went back to their homes. And the train company continues to say that they're doing everything that they can to clean up the mess, that they're not going anywhere, that they're going to stay here as long as is necessary, that they have been financially supporting the community with assistance, for reimbursements for people who had to evacuate, some $6.5 million. So they're saying all the right things, but there's a big mistrust problem here. The residents think that as soon as the attention dies down, the train company will be gone. Even tonight, we heard from President Biden at the White House tweeting about rail companies and how this accident should have been prevented if there had been more regulation of the rails, common sense regulations that he says the rail companies have resisted for a very long time. So there's a lot of distrust and a lot of noise out here tonight, Gotti.
A lot of distrust, a lot of noise, and that train, that blaring sound, such a reminder of what happened there. How are people dealing with the mounting health concerns? Do you think that the governor drinking the water did anything?
You know, it's been over 2 weeks, and just about every day, public officials here and others try to do things to reassure the public. I think it's going to take some time, I guess is the short answer. There was a clinic that was open today that the government set up for people to come who have health problems, who are worried about rashes and headaches and so forth, as we've heard the complaints over the days and weeks since this happened. We've also talked to a number of people who say they want to get a baseline, go to a doctor and get a baseline for various measurements and tests so that they know that if things change in the months and years ahead, that they have this reference point. And so we have not, you talk to the governor and others, they say that they have not specifically linked a case of something to the chemicals that were at the site. But you know, that's not easy to do, they say, the experts say, in the short run. So all of that, again, leading to this, for some to be very distrustful of the situation and very leery going forward. So that's what we've got here. Residents who are still very concerned, residents who are still worried about whether the railroad company is going to clean up this mess, and really worried about what's going to be happening here years down the road.
And Ron, you're so close to the train tracks. We kept showing some video of your live shot there, as well as the old video from those chemicals being burned off. I got to ask, does it smell like chemicals where you're at?
No, it doesn't to me at all. The crash site is some ways from here. This train line goes a long way through numerous towns. Remember, the train that crashed was about a mile long itself. So we think we are in a safe place. We've been very, very mindful of all that, and we will continue to. And thank you for asking.
Yeah, glad to hear it. Thanks so much, Ron. Now, I want to play something for you that caught my ear, something that Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said on Monday.
While this horrible situation has gotten a particularly high amount of attention, there are roughly 1,000 cases a year of a train derailing.
Now, the thing is, he's right. Train derailments are way more common than you might think. There were over 1,000 last year. Back in 1980, a record high of 6,400. But if you've been watching the headlines, it might feel like all of a sudden these things are happening all at once. It turns out, though, the crash in Ohio isn't even the first of its kind this year. A train derailed in Louisiana January 28th, spilling thousands of gallons of hazardous material and forcing over 100 to evacuate. A freight train also derailed in Seattle January 11th. No one was hurt, but crashed into a power station and knocked out electricity. And just this morning, a train hauling coal derailed in Nebraska. After the break, construction sites and meat packing plants are not the safest place for kids. So why are some states pushing to get teens to work at them? Now, Tonight continues next. In Minnesota, some lawmakers are looking to allow teenagers to fill construction jobs. And Iowa is hoping to hire 14-year-olds in meatpacking plants. It's raising a whole host of questions over what is safe when it comes to workers that are almost kids. And NBC News correspondent Guad Vanegas takes a closer look.
Minors as young as 14 working inside industrial freezers and meat coolers. Just one of the latest proposals by a state legislature flirting with the idea of relaxing child workplace protections.
We're certainly in a tight labor market right now, but trying to relax our child labor laws at a point we're seeing more and more violations seems to me a very wrong-headed policy.
Last month, two states, Iowa and Minnesota, introduced bills to loosen age regulations as well as workplace safety protections in some of the most dangerous workplaces.
And the legislators in Minnesota and Iowa are justifying it because we need more workers. And I think the underlying reason is cost control.
If passed, Minnesota's bill would allow 16 and 17-year-olds to work construction jobs, while Iowa's proposed change would allow 14 and 15-year-olds to work certain jobs in meatpacking plants as long as they are separate from where the meat is prepared and they wear the proper gear.
There is a federal law, so kids can't work in mining, they can't work in meatpacking because they cause serious injuries. And what Iowa wants to do is just thumb their noses at the federal law and say, no, we're going to, in our state, we are going to endanger children. That's how we're going to answer the labor crisis.
In Iowa, the proposal would also protect the business from civil liability if a student worker is sickened, injured, or killed on the job.
The data is really clear that young workers have incredibly high rates of injuries on the job. And allowing young workers to do these is just about exploiting whoever they can to make a profit.
Senator Jason Schultz, the author of Iowa's bill, did not return NBC News' request for comment. State Senator Rich Straheim, chief author of the Minnesota legislation, told NBC News, quote, eliminating work opportunities for youth just because of their age will make it even harder for businesses to find reliable employees. The proposed changes come as the Department of Labor cracks down on companies illegally employing minors. Just last week, a federal investigation uncovered that 102 teenagers, some as young as 13, were working overnight shifts cleaning slaughterhouses across the Midwest. As a result, the sanitation company forced to pay $1.5 million in fines.
And for more on what's happening at those slaughterhouses, let's bring in NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley, who's been covering this for us. Julia, can you tell us a little bit more about the working conditions that these kids were in?
Yeah, as I understand it from speaking to Labor Department investigators and people who have spoken with the children, we understand that it was incredibly dangerous. In fact, some of those machines where they were cleaning has been known to decapitate adults. Also, school officials say that they were showing up to school with burns on their arms, showing that they were using caustic chemicals to clean these facilities, something that would be considered dangerous even for adults.
And Julia, how did the feds learn that a cleaning service was breaking these child labor laws?
Well, they say that they had to get tips from the community, which is often how these things start. And then they were able to find in this one plant in Grand Island, Nebraska, that there were 23 children working the night shift. Then that widened when they started probing the company, finding all of those violations across 8 different states. Now we understand that they found 102 children. This is really the way these investigations go. It has to start with a tip from the community. So the Labor Department is asking if anyone else sees signs that children might be working in environments like these in their towns to reach out to them.
So this by no means looks like an isolated incident. The company looks very massive in terms of their footprint. What happens next for this company?
That's right. It's a huge company, 17,000 employees in all, and now they are under a consent decree for the next 3 years. They'll have an independent monitor to make sure that they abide by child labor laws. But for the children themselves, I asked the investigators about that. How can you make sure that these same children aren't just being hired by another company to do the same work in another town? And they said, look, we can't follow the children. We can't track them. But what we can do is go after individual companies and hold them accountable if they violate laws like these. And those investigators, I will say, said that this is one of the most egregious violations they've ever seen. The company, though, PSSI, says they were fully cooperative with the investigation and that they did not impede any of the investigative steps.
Do we know if anybody's been fired over this? Are there any possible criminal sanctions that can happen here?
Well, we know that the company paid a $1.5 million fine, but that doesn't preclude the Justice Department from coming in and doing a criminal investigation. It could be possible the Department of Labor has already made that referral to the Justice Department. We just have to wait and see. The Justice Department not commenting on that tonight. As for whether or not the company has fired anyone, as we found from the document that we reviewed, it seems that when this was made aware, when this problem was brought up to the company years previously, hiring supervisors were merely disciplined and not fired for that behavior, Gotti.
Wow, egregious. NBC's Julia Ainsley, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And when asked what brought these people together for over 50 years, the answer was simple: friendship. But the National Brotherhood of Skiers also has a mission. It's to identify, develop, and support athletes of color, not only to celebrate the joy of winter sports, but to win at them. NBC's Steve Patterson has more from Vail.
Watching a troop of talented young skiers shred up the slopes of Vail is a thing of beauty. Realizing they're all black is a vision.
It's super fun.
But this is still a rare sight. This past ski season, the National Ski Areas Association says that 89% of visitors to U.S. ski areas identify as white. A problem Ben Finley and Art Clay set out to solve half a century ago, starting the National Brotherhood of Skiers to advocate for greater representation in winter sports and dispel the idea that black people don't ski.
We are skiers who happen to be black. People sometimes get us confused. Well, you're just black people who happen to ski. No, we are skiers who happen to be black.
Every year, they bring thousands of black skiers together.
What we tried to do was make it all a party. You know, just, hey, while we out here partying, why don't you try some of these skis? And it worked.
It's a brotherhood, sisterhood. It's all good.
Groups from Denver to Detroit.
It's just wonderful. We love it.
Even as far away as London.
We ski high.
Their goals are growing. They hope to see black athletes on Olympic podiums. 20-year-old freestyle skier Keegan Supple is the dream.
What's it like to just fly through the air like that? It looks crazy.
I mean, it's one of the best things ever. It's the most freedom you'll ever feel.
He's one of several NBS-sponsored athletes with U.S. team ambitions and talent.
I didn't really have any role models growing up.
Now he's surrounded by them. Proof that finding serenity on the slopes has never been skin deep. Steve Patterson, NBC News, Vail, Colorado.
Very snowy serenity. That's Steve Patterson. Thanks so much. Still to come, what in the world was an alligator doing in a New York City park? We've got those details coming up, so stay tuned.
It was 4 feet, 11 inches long, a big animal. Didn't quite know what it was going to do, how it would react.
An alligator in New York City? That is what turned up at Brooklyn's Prospect Park on Sunday. NBC News' Stephanie Gosk is our investigator.
Legend has it, alligators roam the sewers of New York City. Turns out they're swimming in Brooklyn's Prospect Park, or at least one was on Sunday, shocking a New Yorker who quickly called the park ranger.
Park enforcement sergeant responded quickly to the scene, and she was actually the one who snared it in the water. She thought it wasn't alive, and it quickly opened its eyes.
Was she alarmed at all during this process?
Yeah, it was it was 4 feet, 11 inches long, a big animal. Didn't quite know what it was going to do, how it would react.
The alligator was not in good condition, emaciated and moving slowly, likely because of the cold temperatures. Will this poor little guy survive?
I hope so. I mean, it's in the good hands of the Wildlife Conservation Society.
Park officials don't know how the alligator got there. They are asking the public for information. It's illegal to own an alligator in New York State, one of 20 states that has a comprehensive ban on dangerous animals as pets. But enforcing the laws can be difficult. In Arizona last month, police found a tiger cub inside a Phoenix home after getting a tip that someone wanted to sell it. They also found a baby alligator in a fish tank. The neighbors were understandably relieved.
They shouldn't have animals like that.
In Florida, Burmese pythons are a big, sometimes very big problem. Released into the wild by owners who shouldn't have them, they're an invasive species, and they are thriving. This one, found last summer, weighed 215 pounds and was 18 feet long.
What else can happen with exotic pets being released in the wild? What's your message to people?
Yeah, don't do it.
Despite the legends, alligators definitely don't belong in New York City.
No, they don't. Thanks, Stephanie. And before we go, here are your 60 seconds of joy. Today is Fat Tuesday in New Orleans, and there's one Mardi Gras tradition those outside Louisiana might not be aware of. It is called the Chicken Run. That's right. That's when the entire small town of Basile comes together, fully dressed in costume. The annual tradition involves begging for ingredients like chicken and rice for a big old pot of gumbo. A Maryland dog has been rescued after getting stuck in a construction hole. A 13-year-old good boy fell down the hole in his backyard. Thankfully, Sammy the dog was eventually reunited with his family. And a high schooler in Connecticut collected more than 100 prom dresses so everyone can party in style. She's offering them free to students. She got them through community donations and just wants to empower other students. And sorry, I gotta admit, as a new dad, I've been trying to come up with a dad joke at the end of every 60 seconds. You might have noticed, but this one was about prom, and I just couldn't think of a punchline. Because the prom did it. That does it for us. Peak cringe level unlocked. I'm Gotti Schwartz for Now Tonight. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.